Welcome to part 2 of Back to the Blues with Robben.Ford. Today we'll hear more from Robben's incredible trio, the Blue Line, featuring Tom Breckline on drums and Roscoe Beck on bass. Also, Robben talks about how to be more melodic using triads, good phrasing, and simplicity. He'll also demonstrate comping and soloing over a swing blues and a one-chord blues vamp. In a special section devoted to right-hand techniques, Robben shows how he uses his fingers as well as a pick for dynamics and expression. And we'll talk with Robben about his influences, guitars, stage setup, and how to get a good sound.
Okay, so this is my third video for REH. The first two I'll tell you a little bit about in case you haven't seen them. First was kind of beginning video. We talked about really basic things about harmony and blues playing. The second video got a lot more adventurous, and we looked a lot more at broader harmonic spectrum, rhythms, and even playing through chord changes more in the past. So we have these two things, the basic grassroots, and then quite an expansion which goes beyond the basic blues harmony and concept. So in this video I'm hoping we can put these two things together in a way that exemplifies, I guess in particular, what I'm doing right now with my group and my own personal style of guitar playing. So we'll see if we can do that for you. But first, let me give you a note to tune up. We're going to play a B-flat shuffle right now, and basically I'll keep it simple in the front and play real straight ahead blues guitar, and then as it develops, hopefully I'll be able to stretch it a little bit more and more and bring more of the altered chords into the playing. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The little jam session we just had there is something that I've enjoyed doing for years. Even the key of B flat, it just seems like the swinginest key for an up-tempo shuffle blues. I don't know exactly why, but I just like that. And you know, what we were doing there was mixing the traditional blues style with a real swinging jazz approach as well, using altered chords, 1, 6, 2, 5 chord changes in there. So, you know, these two worlds have never seemed really far apart to me. They're virtually synonymous as far as I'm concerned, blues playing and jazz playing. And for me, again, that works in just about any musical context. It's always the same. Where you're coming from is one place. It's you and your instrument, and you're making music the best way you know how. To put those two things together, blues and jazz, it's just not that big of a leap on an emotional or even stylistic level to me. So I feel very at home in either medium as far as the groove is concerned, and I've learned enough about the chords to have some idea how to play through those chord changes. I have a tendency to start playing the altered tones when we get to that sixth chord, key of B flat. I'll play pretty much straight ahead through all that. And now when we get here, on the sixth chord, I'll play the sixth chord, the altered sixth chord, and 9 times out of 10, I like playing that particular voicing, which is the diminished scale. And you got your 2 chord, which could be either C minor or C7, C9, to the 5 chord. Perfect opportunity for a 2-5, you know. There are some real essential things that I'd like to talk about here
that really make all the difference in the world. It's like the open secret aspects of music. It's like it's not really a big deal, but it seems to elude people in some ways, which is how you actually make music, you know.
For me, I don't play too many licks, what people call licks. I never sat down and actually learned a bunch of licks, or took licks off records, like, you know, writing them out, transcribing, whatever like that. For me, music's always been just a real audio experience. It's something that, you know, you listen to music. Music is something that comes into your ears from the air. It's created by other people, but it's intangible in itself, and that which inspires music also is intangible. It's the you know, the emotional aspect of it. Music, in its central aspect, is basically folk music. You know, it's music that comes from people's experiences. You know, people's joys, sadnesses, whatever, you know. The aspect of it being music, you have to really attach the technical aspects of playing or of music to, you know, your emotions. Music is just like language. Like, you learned how to speak by hearing and practicing all the time. And you had a great need to learn how to speak because everyone else was speaking around you. And you know, you had to learn how to speak. It was that important to you. So I kind of see music as the same way. It comes from that kind of a need to communicate. Everybody gets very excited by people who are amazing wizards on an instrument. But it only goes so far, you know. And what's really important is that you're saying something as opposed to just playing something. So for me, I hear what I'm playing, it's as melody. It's not licks. There's a little bit of that in there, but one of the reasons I'm drawn more and more to the blues all the time is because it's such a vocal music, and the blues guitar players are playing the guitar from the same place that a blues singer is singing. It's identical. There's no difference. The medium is different, but the emotion, the intent, all of those things are the same. That's why blues guitar is kind of simple, because it's coming from a vocal place. You keep that and go out from there into more sophisticated music forms, jazz, classical music, and what ties those things together, the emotion and the sophistication of these, more complex musical forms or whatever, is melody. It's a song. So it's a singing thing. You know, it's the beauty of the melody. Or, jazz, obviously, harmony became very important, and technique has always been very important as well. But nonetheless, the thing that makes it really work is if there's some kind of heartfelt melodic quality to it. I've always liked the melody players. In jazz guitar, my favorite guitarist is Jim Hall. And he is probably the simplest of all of those guitarists. And I say simple in that there's a lot of space in his music and the way he plays, and it's pretty when he plays. Miles Davis, as a trumpet player, he was able to, do whatever. He was able to play the shit out of the trumpet. And came up, working with Charlie Parker, who was probably the most incredible improviser of all time. But he was always drawn towards simplicity and melody. Always drawn towards it, He wanted to be able to hear it, to be able to sing it, to be able to feel it. And that's the blues. That's how it's attached to the blues. And he did a record called Kind of Blue, which many of you may know, but I would consider it essential listening in this respect of simplicity in the forms, brilliant, musicality, very sophisticated, but real simple. And also John Coltrane's album, Ballads, I would recommend people to listen to. For the most part, he just plays the melody, but you've never heard the melody played, more beautifully. And it's such a singing quality in the way he plays. The composer, Maurice Ravel, I am a big fan of, and in particular, for me, there's a wonderful piece of music called the Mother Goose Suite, which is just full of all these wonderful melodies, And Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring, another example of just a lot of wonderful melodies. It's all drawn from folk music. And, these things they're so heartfelt, and so pretty, beautiful, and emotional. You need to expose yourself to things like that, music like that. Music that actually is, coming from that place. And there's plenty of it on the rawest levels, John Lee Hooker, or, the real funky blues, all the way to, Igor Stravinsky. Not necessarily the most emotional composer of all time, but people like Ravel and Debussy. And you want to listen to that. You want to listen to that so you have a nice round musical experience that's coming from a place of a love of music and some kind of beauty and joy and, real good human experiences and emotions.
a finely tuned machine. Yes, such a solid groove, the best I've ever seen. You got a motor like a brand new car, baby, start it up for me. Such a finely tuned machine. Yes, such a solid groove, the best I've ever seen. You got a motor like a brand new car, start it up for me. Start it up, start it up. You make me feel like romancing. Start it up, start it up. Make me feel like dancing. You got a motor like a brand new car. Baby, start it up for me. Start it up.
So let me show you some possibilities with basically a single seventh chord. We played this little rhythm thing in G. So I'll start from real simple ones to maybe a little bit more interesting ones, or harmonically interesting ones, shall we say. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a G7. And we got that little hammer thing in the third, which gives it some kind of movement, and it's not just stagnant. So there you go. Now, if anybody tells you that's not cool music, they got a hole in their soul. You know what I mean? And there was a time when I really got away from these chords. I wanted to learn all these hip chords. And I couldn't believe that people were still even interested in playing a major triad, you know. So over the course of time and being affiliated with some musicians who had already been through the chord and harmony school, I relearned, you know, the beauty of these simple things, you know. So there you go. That's a nice one, just that G7 chord. Okay. Now we can just take it right on up the ladder here to this G7 chord. Okay, now that was first we had the tonic on top. Now we have the third on top. That's how the chord's built: tonic, third, fifth. Now you have the next one is the seventh, tonic, third, fifth, seventh. This is a pretty funky voicing here, right? You might prefer to hear like a 9 chord, G9, or this one right here. So. Okay. There's some simple, just 7th chord voicings. Okay, we could also play this 9 chord. Okay, G9. Now we can play this D minor. Basically, becomes G9. And there's a nice little hammer-on thing you can do. So I'm basically playing an A minor 7, and then a D minor over G. Then you have your basic G9 chord. And I think I had a friend who was the son of the people who owned the local record store in town. He played guitar. He had a Martin acoustic, and I'd never seen anything like that, you know, at the time. He showed me how to play a 9 chord, and he used to play it this way, with the 5th in the root. Now, I never cared for that too much because I don't like doubling notes. There's just never seen any point. If you played the note once, I don't really want to hear it again, you know. So you can play that, but that's the way I played a 9 chord. And basically now I've narrowed it down to just those notes because I invariably am playing with a bass player, and he's got that. So he's already got that, and I don't need to play it. So there's a 9 chord. In fact, I usually play it this way because it enables me to get other places a little easier. That was a 9 chord there. There's a 9 chord there, G7. So you got there's a bunch of 9 chords for you. We're going to do something now, exercising the wah-wah pedal a little bit. It's a wonderful little device. It was very big, I think, during the late 60s and early 70s, and kind of vanished for a while as passé. But it's a great thing if you're not into a lot of effects, particularly in your setup and everything. Wah-wah pedal is just a great little color that I've grown very fond of using once again. So we're going to just play this one chord jammeroonie here, and keep your eyes on the chordal work in particular, because I think that's the more interesting part of what we're going to do here. What I'm going to do here, anyway. What they do is always interesting. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. you may have noticed some changes in the setting here. We're in Los Angeles, California right now, as opposed to Seattle. I had thought about what we'd shot up there and decided I wanted to add a few things. Mainly some a little bit more technical aspects of guitar playing, and in particular the use of triads in the blues and also fingering techniques. Mainly right hand is what I want to put the accent on here, but I'm going to show you a few uses of some triads in an A blues. So I want to show you one little thing here. A C major triad against A. Right there, you've got a C major triad. Third, fifth, and tonic. And when adding a little kind of left-handed hammer on here to that major third, you've got a nice little blues lick there. And putting on top of that an A minor triad. We've expanded the lick here. And again, bringing in the C major triad an octave above and played slightly differently. I'm just playing, sliding up to the fifth of, or the third of a C major, and just dragging my finger across it here. And that's the same thing an octave down. Okay, now if we were playing a slow blues, for instance, key of A, there's that C major triad. Okay, now right there, that was using the D major triad. Moving into the 4 chord. Same fingering as the previous one, the C major against A. You can play it with the same fingering, or I sometimes use this fingering. Using my little finger, and it might be kind of hard to see because I keep these fingers so close together, but I'm using the little finger in the first one. And then playing the 7th of the D chord. Okay, now right there for the E, I just basically spelled an E chord. 3rd, 5th, the 6th, and then the tonic. So I'm basically playing an E major 6 there. Once again, the D. Okay, so that is a real, something I use a lot in my playing, especially the more time I have, for instance, in a slow blues, is just using the triad to get from one lick to another. That's just playing an A major triad, right? and then playing the minor third above it. I want to talk a little bit about right hand technique right now. As you can see, even at this very moment, I'm holding the pick between these two fingers. I don't know how it got there, because I never thought about how it got there, but somehow it's just, I'm holding the pick, for instance, and slip it in between the two fingers. And I used to drop more picks than I do now, but I finally learned how to hang on to the thing, but it just stays right there. And we've discussed this in previous videos, but I thought I might add a little bit to it here. Mainly, the technique is to hit the string with the finger closest to it. Makes a lot of sense. But I also find that my middle finger does a great deal of the single note work. It kind of acts, that and the thumb for the lower strings, it acts as the pick more than the first finger, for instance. And the thumb will come into play whenever, basically on the lower three strings for the most part. I'll play an entire lick, basically just using the thumb. I've never been very good about using these two fingers together. Now this could be considered a slow technique. I mean, if you're basically just using one finger to play several notes, you can't do it too fast, but you can surprise yourself sometimes. I'm not necessarily recommending that you play it this way either. This technique developed very sort of naturally for me, without a lot of thought and just a lot of consistently putting my pick away and just playing. There'll never be any substitute for that, so you might discover your own techniques as well. So when I was showing you those triads in the beginning, to play that one right there, the right hand, the thumb pulls that low E there, so it's just 1, 2, 3. First and second fingers, always used for the double stops. And then the thumb will play the single string. or the middle finger for me will play the high string. I'm going to talk a little bit about picking technique. There's a lot of different approaches to it. You know, downstrokes, upstrokes, pull-offs, which is avoiding using your pick for something. I use the butt into the pick as opposed to the tip for the most part. The pick for me acts very similarly to the thumb, basically when using both pick and fingers to play at the same time. But it brings in another possibility, which is a strong backstroke. Now, often I'll use the pick very deliberately using only downstrokes. And I say deliberately because it's just that. The only way I can get the kind of sound that I want for something, which is kind of a pushy kind of a thing. It's like kind of bad technique, but it's the only way you can get that thing. Now, if you play it very precisely, it doesn't have the same effect, you know? So this is what I like to think of as kind of using bad technique for good purposes. So you don't have to be afraid of that. It's actually kind of fun. A certain amount of abandon in there and tossing technique out the window and just going for much more of an emotional expression, which is kind of crude in a way, but you know, we have these qualities within us, and in fact they're a lot of fun to play with, you know. That's a big part of what blues is. So I'll try to demonstrate a little bit of my picking technique for you in a slow blues, using the pick. There are things that happen when you play if you actually let your emotions sort of carry you. Requires a certain amount of, you know, courage and going out on a limb, as opposed to, you know, having your technique all together per se. And a lot of it is just these little subtle little things, like for instance, the way you might play with the pick, and it's actually something that I think comes from experience. You know, the more and more you play, and particularly the more and more you play in front of an audience, that's the way you're going to discover these things, you know, because it's an emotional issue. It's not, or it's an object of feeling as opposed to a technique. It sounds different when you play with the pick. I'm kind of using the whole flat part of the pick here to get a little softer, lighter thing. Double stops is a very effective thing in the blues. And once again, I like to use them. I use them a lot of different ways, but using them in that kind of abandoned way, you know, with kind of a lot of downstrokes. One of my favorites is what happens here. It's like, here's an A octave, right? A on the D string, A on the B string, and you've got this basically minor pentatonic with the flatted fifth included. And also, just using the fifth intervals, right? The fifth here, the tonic here, and then basically just moving them in the pentatonic scale. We're going to do a tune now which many of you may know. This is a classic for us. It's called Talk to Your Daughter.
She made me love her.
for me, the reason, probably the greatest reason that I have really gone more back toward the blues has been the mere fact that I play an electric guitar. And the electric guitar has never fit into jazz for me. It's just, like the great jazz guitarists, there have been many, but I never went after it because I found that the sound was kind of monotonous. Most people play with that same tone, bass pickup, kind of fat sound, and there wasn't a lot of tonal variation or a lot of nuance. So tone and nuance is something a guitar is full of, but you hear it in the blues. You don't hear it in jazz, So then for the harmony and chord changes and all of that, I listen to saxophone players. Let's talk about getting a good sound. People have different predilections for instruments and amplifiers, and truly there is a lot of stuff out there that affects your sound, or can affect your sound, that you can use to create a sound. I'd like to stress that the most important aspect of your sound is going to be your concept of sound, which really boils down to what sounds good to you. what sounds good to you. And basically your body, meaning in particular your fingers, and how you touch the instrument, how you play the instrument. That's what sound is really about. So please don't forget that. And don't think that sound is out there somewhere, and if you plug in the right gizmos, you're going to get the sound you want, because that's not it. It really comes from inside. My first real nice six-string was a Guild Starfire or Firebird or something, single cutaway, little red double pickup Guild, you know. And I bought it because when I checked it out in the music store, it sounded like Mike Bloomfield to me. Sounded like his telly did on that first Butterfield record. I don't know why, but somehow it made it for me. You know, it was like, that's the sound, you know. So, and that was based on a telly, man. Come to think of it. And then, you know, of course, he went to the Les Paul pretty quickly thereafter, but, you know, I just seemed to be able to do whatever I needed to do out of this Guild, you know. And then when I got interested in jazz, which was later on, I mean, I got the an L5 when I was working with, I think, with Charlie Musselwhite. So I was like 19, and I bought an L5. And then about 2 years later with Jimmy Witherspoon, I traded it on a Super 400. And that was because I want to play jazz. I need a jazz guitar. So I got, that looks like a jazz guitar. And then I went to a 335 a little while later on because I was living in up around San Francisco. I had to come to L.A. to do a gig, and I forgot to bring my guitar. So, shit, I needed a guitar. And I was playing with the L.A. Express, so and Joni Mitchell, so I had some money, and I didn't really think about it too much, you know. I went downtown to buy a guitar, you know. We went into Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, and they had a 335 on the wall, and I said, that looks good. I checked it out. I said, okay, I'll take this. Well, this is Old Faithful. I've been playing this guitar since about 1983 or so, maybe 4. Yeah. And it was something that Dan Smith, who at the time I met him was with Yamaha, but we were talking about a guitar, you know, smaller body, double cutaway humbuckers. You know, he wanted to do something that married the Strat and a jazz guitar or a humbucking guitar, Gibson style. I mean, this guitar doesn't do that. That was their intention. I just wanted something, you know, that was smaller than a 335 because I just got tired of that big old thing. And I don't wear my guitar low. I like it kind of high. So between, you know, like he went with it. He and John Carruthers designed this guitar for Fender, and here it is. I mean, this is it. I've changed the pickups. The pickups they made then were no good. Now they're good. They actually have good pickups in them.
Is it hollow? They have some hollow.
Little cavities. Solid, hollow, solid, little hollow there. And of course it's hollow here for that. People need to feel free about messing with their guitars, you know. Very important. I mean, I don't know how to do it myself, but I've, found somebody that I like to do it for me when I need it. And, pickups are easily changed these days. And, people should experiment. If they don't dig their sound, they should experiment with it. I like a bigger bridge. That's a Gibson Nashville bridge. That isn't what originally was on this guitar. I like it. Simple change to do. Also, I have my tone and volume controls disconnected right now in this guitar. Or just, nothing happening there. So I have to rely on the volume pedal, obviously, for that. I'm not so sure I'm going to stay that way, but I have been playing like this for at least a year. So, you can make a change like that, and you can always go back. So people should feel free to check it out, mess around with it. Strings. I use Diodario 10s. My little setup back here is not too complex at all. The main thing here is the Dumble Overdrive Special Amplifier, and fully believe in these amps. I've never found anything for me that compares to them. But I can tell you they're very expensive and they're very hard to get. And the good news is that they're based basically on a Fender Twin. That would be my second amp of choice, would be the Fender Twins. So I'm using a Marshall 412 cabinet here. Speakers, I'm using probably Celestians in there. The speakers are rental. But you might prefer EVs or Altec Lansings or JBL, you know. So speakers are also very important to the kind of sound you're going to get. If you're not getting the sound you want, you may just want to change your speakers. So don't forget that. Each little thing is important to your sound. I use this little Twin over here. It's also a rental, but I do the same myself whenever I'm overseas. We pick up a Twin, and I use it just to broaden the sound that I have. The one amplifier and 412 speaker system is the main thing, and this just spreads the sound out a little bit for me, make it a little bit bigger. I get to it from here. This is the TC Electronics 2290. I use it for chorus and delay. And I come out of the right side of the TC into the Twin over here. That's how the signal gets there. I'm using a PCM 70 reverb lexicon. And one is an extra. This is the Dumbulator, which is made by Alexander Dumble, and it's the effects loop for the Dumble amplifier. It just enables the amp and the outboard gear to interface properly. Without the Dumbulator and the Dumble amp and these effects wouldn't work anywhere near as well. This stuff is pretty expensive gear. The amp head, the TC, and the PCM. But you don't necessarily need that, you know. I truly believe that with one or two good Fender Twins, I'm not trying to advertise here, by the way, but for the kind of sound that I like and a blues sound, I've seen every blues guitar player, I mean B.B. King, I can't say every one, but B.B. King and Albert Collins, who are probably my favorites, both use Fender Twins a lot. So I would recommend checking them out. And also the little TC Electronics stereo chorus, this little foot model, goes on the floor, is a good little chorus box. So you got a nice chorus in that, nice reverb and amps in the Twin reverbs. Beyond that, you might want a little delay, and that's basically all I use: reverb, a little chorusing, and a little delay. And I try to use them sparingly. And the Twins have an overdrive station in them, so that's what I have with the Dumble. It's got an overdrive station in it, and that's how I get my overdrive tone. Clean setting and then an overdrive. And beyond that, I use Ernie Ball volume pedal to control my volume level. And I use an old Crybaby wah-wah pedal. This next song is from the Robben.Ford and the Blue Line album, our first solo album as a band. It's
what you are. One day you'll wake up and see you went too far. Now with the sunshine, there will be some rain, but it was never meant to be in vain. And you don't want to hear a single word I'm saying. You cut me to the bone, baby, you cut me to the bone. You know how to make a man feel love the way you cut me to the bone. Ouch. You know how to make a man feel love the way you cut me to the bone.
Well, definitely my first real guitar inspiration was Michael Bloomfield with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. It was the first blues I ever heard in my life, really, that I went, was struck by this music. And it was the first real, especially at that time, guitar virtuoso that I ever heard. The guy was playing so much more than anybody else, and prior to that, all I'd ever heard was Keith Richards and George Harrison, not to belittle them, but this guy was playing the shit out of the guitar. So, bam, I got hooked at that moment. And I'd been noodling on the guitar, but I was still kind of playing saxophone and everything, and singing with my group. But once I heard that, it was just, like a world opened up for me, And I was... 2 hours north of San Francisco, and the whole scene was busting loose in San Francisco with all those San Francisco bands. I mean, the Grateful Dead, Big Brother and the Holding Company, and all of those. But also, Paul Butterfield was coming through town and might even have been living there. Mike Bloomfield started his band, the Electric Flag. Albert King, B.B. King, they were all playing there. And so I used to go see him play, B.B. King was a revelation, absolutely. He was like the second revelation. First it was Mike Bloomfield. Then I saw B.B. King live because I went to see the Electric Flag, which was Mike Bloomfield's band. And B.B. King opened the show. I don't remember if he opened it or closed it, but he came out there, and I had no idea what I was going to hear, and it was B.B. King. He may as well have been at the Apollo Theater. I mean, he's given. And, how old was he at the time? He was maybe 35, maybe 35, something like that. So he's in his prime. And it was just amazing, man. He was just so much heart and soul and sounding great, and his band's cooking. We were dying, My brothers and I was just like, this is it. I've died and gone to heaven, man, And so, of course, we got the first B.B. King record we could get our hands on, which was live at the Apollo. And it sounded just like it. It sounded just like when we saw him, man. And so then Albert King, And, of course, Eric Clapton I'd heard with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. And he's still probably my favorite Clapton guitar work. and Hendrix, Jimi Hendrix. I always like to say that everything you ever heard about Miles Davis was true. And that kind of says it all for me in a nutshell. The thing about the guy,
He's tremendously challenged both the musical, and he's always challenging you to be there fully. Can you hang in this situation? And I figured that out real quick, because it's so intimidating, you know. I mean, like, he'd come, you know, walking towards you with his little trumpet, you know, and he's a very dark person, and he wears shades like this and all these wild clothes, you know. He looked like Darth Vader or something, you know. It's like the Force is coming at you. So he was an intimidating person, but man, he was always ready to play, you know, kind of spar or whatever. So I figured it out quick, because otherwise, you know, it's sink or swim. And there were guys, you know, who went through that band who kind of treaded water, you know, and you can't do that, you know. That's, I don't know, that's no fun. Yeah. So, you know, just whenever he would challenge me, I would come up to it, you know, even if I was kind of scared, because, you know, he's scary. Yeah, I can imagine. But very funny, great sense of humor, and, you know, just always kind of poking you and playing with you, you know, or really intimidating at times, and I just, you know, wouldn't buy into it, you know. And he dug that, man, and within 5 concerts that I played with him, he was just completely civil, and he'd call me on the telephone, we'd talk, you know. And it was amazing. Suddenly it's Miles Davis, and you were talking on the phone, you know. Well, when the very first show that I played with him, I felt like he probably wanted to hear Mike Stern or John Scofield, you know. So I was really trying to play a lot of notes and really going for a lot of harmonic adventure. And basically I wound up tied in knots and feeling really uptight, because I wasn't just doing my thing, you know. So, and that quick, I mean, it was like I knew the next day, it's like, just be yourself or you're not going to make it here, you know. So I just went out and I just did my thing. I played with my fingers, played a lot of blues, you know. And having not gotten quite as far away from playing more harmonically adventurous music at that time, it was easy for me to fall into it, you know. It was mostly one chord. I mean, the music that we played, I soloed on one chord 95% of the time, you know. So that chord was basically, you know, potentially a 12-tone row. I mean, you know, it was like, it seemed that any note you played worked if you played it the right way. So I fooled with it. And just, I mean, like the tremendous thrust of being on stage with him, you know, he was making you play. That's the way it felt. Like, you know, you've got to play. So you just go for it, you know. And you only knew that your solo was over when he started playing trumpet again. Then you stop, you know. So in a sense, it was kind of difficult to actually build anything from the ground up, because you always felt like, I've got to be playing my ass off right now, you know. That's like my favorite part. Like the thing I learned from Miles Davis was the beauty of simplicity, you know. I mean, the combination of him and people like B.B. King and Albert King, where it's all soul and touch and tone, you know. That's what the blues is all about. And, you know, Miles, who went through that whole school of bebop, etc., and, you know, beyond, to me became the greatest example of a guy who knew harmony inside and out, but didn't spend his days exercising it all the time, you know. So, you know, it's just, it's the whole fun of it, you know, to me, to be in a blues band where I can do that, you know. You know, he kept his music simple. Miles' music was, it sounded complex in a lot of ways, but man, he kept it simple. So that's kind of what we do in this group. We keep it simple, but the door is always open to, you know, altered chords, really. Yeah. I mean,
in that sense, we're a jazz band, you know. So once again, I want to say thank you, in particular to Roger Hutchinson and CPP Belwin for making this video happen, and my good friend Don Mock, who is always completely invaluable in making these things. I hope that I've given you something a little newer, a little fresher here. You know, once again, we'd just like to encourage you to get into the basics of music, you know? Get into the real fundamental things about music, which for me boils down to the blues. Because that's where all the other music that ever came out of America came from, aside from the obvious European influences of classical music. Not to worry too much about having really expensive gear, and think more about how you're playing it, and how you're hearing it, and what it is that you want to say. So remember, it's music we're talking about, and not just technique, chops, whatever you want to call it. So good luck, and I'm sure we'll see each other again.